leads me to the idea of standing on shoulders, and standing on the shoulders of family is something that many of us can identify with. And many of us will be able to identify with Chardonnay Beaver. And the story that she's going to share is generational and it's inspiring. So, Chardonnay, want to join us? Hi. I know you've got so much to share too. Your story is rich. It's something that's evolving too. So I'm going to back away and let you go ahead and share what you have to share today.
Yes, thank you so much, MOHAI and Black Heritage Society. It's a pleasure. To briefly describe myself, I am a Black young woman. My hair is slicked back in a bun. I'm wearing this creamy beige blazer, and I'm smiling. So, good afternoon or good evening. My name is Chardonnay Beaver, and amongst many things, I am proud to be the granddaughter of Fitzgerald Beaver. Since childhood, I always understood my grandpa to be this public, influential figure, somewhat larger than life. I admired the lasting impact the facts have had on generations, young and old. His story always seemed so distant, yet near. Someone I never met, yet he is a part of me. Next slide. So let's get right into it. Born in Martinsville, Virginia on January 18, 1922, he was born into an interracial relationship. His mother white, his father Black. Being that he was the only child, his mother instilled values of education, for she was a school teacher. He completed high school in Martinsville, Virginia, and he later attended A&T College in Greensboro, North Carolina. Now, fast forwarding to his life, next slide. My grandfather's career in media and finding his voice was always along the way. So, first, he started his radio career in North Bend, Oregon, and continued radio and public relations training in Los Angeles, California. By 1955, he returned to Portland and developed a radio personality on his radio show, Chardonnay Beaver, along with establishing a magazine. Throughout the years, I've had many community members come up to me and share their stories of him bringing Ike and Tina Turner down to Portland for concerts at his station, back to school drives, just being a figure and constantly being generous to those in which he cared for, which was his community. And to that point, in 1961, he moved to Seattle to manage KZAM-FM, the first Black-owned radio station in the Northwest. KZAM, as some would refer to the station, was a broadcast facility small and modest, located on 24th and Union in Seattle's predominantly Black Central District. The station featured Northwest radio pioneers like jazz connoisseur, the late Bob Summerize, and other personalities like Larry Braxton and Mr. Century. However, in 1 week, my grandpa decided to publish. He found a printer, sold advertising, gathered news, and went to the press. And on September 7th, 1961, that same year, the Facts newspaper was established, appearing as this pink 16-page metro-sized chronicle of Black heritage, reporting the excellence in transitions within the Black community. Next slide. And here you can see an image of the Facts. We have that historic, iconic car all mounted on top of our roof, and the billboard, the letterboard, where we put all our information. And so by 1962, he left KZAM, and I quote, "The job just was not for him." My grandfather was 40 years old when he left KZAM and a year into the Facts. Next slide. And so during this period, throughout the course of the Facts, I mean, we've been blessed to survive recessions and echoes of housing discrimination and so many other forms of oppression and economic injustice. But the civil rights movement and the activism within journalism during that period was capturing our stories and singing our praises. The location of the facts, again, it was on East Cherry and then Empire Way, which is now East Cherry and Martin Luther King Jr. Way. Shout out to Eddie Rye. That was allowing us to be a hub and capturing the stories and essence of Black people, Black news, our day-to-day lives. And in the paper, there was features of columnists like Harold Murphy's Unbroken Chain, which was a poetry column, Kwame, also known as Amari Garrett's 40 Acres and a Mule, which was a critical analysis of the status of the Black community, history, and heritage. And then Dave Mann, a great friend of the family and my father's godfather, he was a former athlete, Man's Bites and Pieces, a sports column. However, my grandfather found his own right of activism when writing his own column titled, first, it was Right On, from the publisher's pen, and then later transitioning from that to from the publisher's pen. It served as a vehicle for him to state pieces and topics like Black history, housing disparities, the necessity of education, and the overall progress of Seattle's Black and Brown communities. Next slide. The facts served as a drum of the village. So you have to remember that during this time, there are waves of, whether it be folks coming in from the South during the Great Migration, or also folks just settling in. And although he was in his 40s, developing the paper, creating new vehicles for other Black journalists, it was a pivotal time in history in which there was no social media, and Blacks were able to use their voice through this vehicle. And so 3 words that I could describe my grandfather as would be tenacious, precise, and generous. My grandfather believed that there was value in people, which was a message that my father, his youngest son, would pass along to me. His awareness of where the community was speaks to his precision and his relationships. He had great relationships with politicians, ranging to youth in the juvenile detention center. He genuinely cared, and anyone who walked into the office felt that love. My grandfather, during his lifetime, received over 100 community service awards. In addition, my grandpa also was a teacher. Mr. Beaver, as folks would call him, he was a teacher and a mentor to many. I mean, considering publishers like Chris Bennett of the Seattle Medium newspaper and Bernard Foster of the Scanner newspaper out of Portland, Oregon. He gave them and many the opportunity to explore the realm and craft of journalism and storytelling and art and photography. He also formed lasting relationships with other Black media outlets along the West Coast, from areas like Southern California to Arizona. Next slide. So you can see this is a picture of the legendary Dee Charlene in her salon with 2 women, one reading the facts paper and then the medium paper. And it just speaks to the echoing legacy of Black media in Seattle. Next slide. So again, echoing that point, my grandpa received so many different awards. This was actually our family home right next door to our property on East Cherry and now MOHAI Way. Yes, and he was a legendary golfer in some ways, amateur as well, but he would travel up and down the West Coast competing. And I would say and have to argue that his treasure and his greatest trophy was his family. My grandfather was married, moving to Seattle, to Chardonnay Beaver, a respected beautician and entrepreneur. Next slide. However, he later married my Nana, Elizabeth, and they wed and raised their 3 children, Levon, Marla, and Dennis, in the Central District. As well as his older children who lived outside of Washington, his adult children, which included Pat, Loran, Emilio, and Lanita. My grandpa truly enjoyed golfing. Again, he traveled, and because of that reason, my father was a member of First State Junior Golf Team, which allowed him to become a dynamic golfer because the organization was valuing Black golfers and allowing them to compete in a sport that usually doesn't include folks who look like me. Next slide. And so I spent a lot of my life in this office, a lot of my early life. And on January 1st, 1992, my grandfather passed. This often symbolizes home for my family, along from it being a hub and a historic site for the Black community. When he passed at the age of 69 due to long-term health concerns, the community grieved a mentor and a teacher and a friend and a leader. But what I hope you get from this message today is that he was also a father, a husband, a friend. And my Nana now had to take on the role of now being not only a widow and a single mother to a teenage son, which was my father, but also stepping up and embarking on the journey of becoming a matriarch and taking on her husband's dream, which we know as the Facts newspaper. Next slide, please. And so this is an image of my father, my two siblings, and myself. And you can see that family and our legacy, the business, is woven into our unit. My father, after my grandfather passed, took on later along the lines, took on the chief and editor role. And today the chief and editor role is now with my auntie Marla Beaver. But you can see that during this period, not only was how the Black community absorbed media changing, but the era of digital era changed, right? So we have the 2000s where the way that in which we perceive and understand media is no longer the same. With cell phones, you don't need a 16-page layout, but you need something that's still going to get to the essence of our community. And that's what we try to do. We pick up where the daily paper leaves off, in the words of my grandpa. Next slide. And so this is an image of my family, not all of us. This was actually probably sometime we were all getting together. But my grandfather, although he's not here, his legacy still resides with us, whether it be us doing layout together or joining each other in family conversations and moments. This is what he missed, but yet this is a part of him. Next slide, please. And here I am. I'm a student at the University of Washington studying political science and communication. And somehow throughout my life, although I've known him to be this huge figure, I miss the points and pieces of him. I've seen my family grieve their father and their husband. And yet it felt so distant until, next slide, until now. I'm a columnist in the Facts with my column Words of Wisdom by Char. Wow, by Char. And it's been a pleasure to be able to share his story with honor. I understand my grandfather to be a man that valued people. And one of the sayings in which he lived by was, I should not pass this way but once. Therefore, any good I can do or any kindness I can show, let me do it now, for I should not pass this way again. And that is a true message of what he stood by as a teacher and a leader. I know that our time is short, but I thank you guys for coming on here again. Thank you, MOHAI. Thank you, Black Heritage Society. And thank you to my Nana, who's the reason why I'm here today. Thank you.
Chardonnay, I'm just, I was getting a little emotional there at the end. I mean, honestly, the community media legacy that you continue to build and shape is something I know that I want to follow. And